So we're on week 19 of the Yellow Vest protests, and man, shit is getting absolutely real over in France. I am so glad that our protests in Britain have been orderly and peaceful for the overwhelming majority of it. And most importantly, nobody's coming into conflict with the cops, or if anyone is, it's the commies. It's the Antifa types who are fighting with the cops. Our side are for the rule of law, so we are not for fighting with cops. Because it has legitimately been a war zone in Paris recently, and presumably other cities as well, where this is going on. I mean, there is a list of injuries that people have had. The leader of the Yellow Vests had his eye shot out. A bunch of people have lost hands. Again, 15 people have lost eyes. I mean, they actually detail it here. 1,700 people have been injured. 1,000 policemen have been hurt. And 11 people have died, although not necessarily by being murdered by the police. Like, one had a heart attack during the demonstration and stuff like this. 15 people have lost eyes or sustained serious eye injuries. It's unbelievable how bad this has got. Like, how many people have to suffer, right, for this? Because the thing is, at this point, right, I'm not even sure what the Yellow Vests even want, because they got a bunch of concessions from Macron, and then they kept protesting. And so now Macron is going to feel justified in using the full force of the state on them, and he's getting worse. I mean, he's noticeably getting worse, right? So you've got armed, just soldiers deployed across France, because obviously it's not just going on in Paris, but I imagine the bulk of these soldiers will be in Paris. I mean, what do you need armed soldiers for, unless you're going to need them to shoot someone at some point? And if you feel that they need to shoot someone, how many people are they going to have to shoot? And how many people... I mean, if like 10 people got shot, or like if one person gets shot, that's gonna go down really badly, isn't it? You know, why couldn't you use non-violent means to drive off the protests, like pepper spray, and and things like this, like, you know, like area effect denial and stuff like this? But I mean, what if 50 people get shot in a day? That's going to be undoing. That's going to be absolute anarchy after that. So, I mean, this is... I just don't think soldiers with live ammunition should be turned against the citizens in this kind of regard. But, I mean, obviously the protests have been banned from the Champs-Élysées, I think it's pronounced. I'm trying. Fuck you. But no, I think that's how it's pronounced. And, I mean, that's genius, isn't it? I hate these protests. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to ban them. That's job done. Ban and get armed soldiers out in the streets. That'll show them. Well, actually, it didn't. They were out actually protesting for their 19th weekend at the Champs-Élysées. 6,000 police officers were out on the streets. And I've heard very interesting rumours about the police that are being put there, because apparently a lot of police are defecting to the Yellow Vests, which, unsurprising, really. Why would they want to have to brutalise their fellow citizens for Macron, who's prepared to die for Emmanuel Macron? Who's prepared to die for him? You know, how can he have any kind of real loyalty amongst the institutions? But, yeah, so they went out and protested there anyway. Obviously massive violence as the cops trying to drive them back. This is just an absolute... It's spiralling into chaos. I mean, where does this end? Because suddenly you'll have groups of people on either side, and much more justified on the Yellow Vest side, in my opinion, who will feel aggrieved and justified in the things that they do to the other side. And so, I mean, it's getting to the point where it looks like it's genuinely spiralling into a kind of civil war. And I think that the spark that will trigger an actual civil war will be about when a bunch of people get shot by the soldiers. But I mean, it's not like I'm saying this as, hi, I'm some crazy guy on the internet. Yeah, well, I'm not the only one saying this. Like, even lefty outlets like the New Statesman are like, okay, we're generally pro-Macron, pro-European Union, pro the things that he's doing with Merkel, but we're not pro him brutalising his own population, which, unsurprisingly, they shouldn't. It's really starting to become a thing that people are aware of. And then you get people like whoever the Red Scarves are, who have called to an end to Yellow Vest violence. Now, these, to me, look very middle class, very out of touch, and people who have been presumably propagandized by the media into thinking the Yellow Vests are some kind of evil force. Because it doesn't seem like the Yellow Vests are the ones causing all of the trouble. I mean, they're not definitely getting the worst of it. Like, no one thinks that the Yellow Vests are the ones doing most of the damage to the cops. It's the cops, and I've seen videos of just gangs of cops finding some guy on the game and just clubbing him and kicking him and punching him. It's like, holy shit. There is never a reason for a gang of cops to punch a protester on the floor. No. The guy's got a right to protest. Even if you really don't like him, once he's on the floor, you can stop hitting. Like, that's about, if he's fighting you, once he's down, okay. If he gets up and stuff fighting, okay, you get him down again. But once he's down, that's it. You don't just sit there brutalising some guy because, right, you got this little shit now, don't you? It's absolutely atrocious. But yeah, so obviously protests were banned in other cities. Interestingly, where Xi Jinping of China is on a tour of Europe, because that's good thing to mention him, in fact, isn't it? Because it's very much what I would expect from the Chinese government in this regard. So, I mean, he must be going, oh, very good idea, yeah, I think I'll try cracking down on protesters with soldiers and and armoured cops. That's a good idea. That'll definitely instill terror in their fucking hearts. Don't know about, being Western constitutional democracy, but I mean, it works for China, doesn't it? I'm sure she can be like Trudeau and go, well, I'm envious of China's ability to turn on a dime because they don't have this cumbersome democratic process getting in the way. So anyway, it's all going badly in France for the Yellow Vests. And when I said back in, I don't know, a few months back now, they'd won, I meant that they won the argument. And they did win the argument. Macron did concede a bunch of stuff, but I guess he didn't go far enough. Because all of this was started over fuel prices. But they definitely had won that argument. And this is why Macron is now cracking down on them with actual state force. Because he can't win this argument. And the thing is, as a philosopher, you might think that you'd be understanding of the idea of winning arguments and changing one's mind based on how these arguments are won and lost, but I guess not. I guess once you've committed to a position, you may as well see it to the very brutal, bloody end, Mr. Macron.